Well, thank you so much, Susan, and it's a real honor to also share evening with Pastor John Huntsman. This is a true story, and maybe it's both for John and maybe as Susan implied for the president, but the White House called me up when there was a vacancy and asked me, well, what do you think about this guy, John Huntsman, to be ambassador to China? And right off the top, I said, you could not find a better person for China. Speaks the language, all the history in China. Fine person, represents the United States so well. I vigorously pushed the White House to name John Huntsman to be ambassador to China. I'm a big fan of John Huntsman. Let's give him a big round of applause. And thank you, Susan. We are very distinguished in service as in so many capacities. I mean, you stood out when you worked for Senator Danforth. I'll never forget. There's this lady, Susan Schwab, man, she knows what she's talking about. She's tough. She leaves a mark. I was back working for Jack Danforth, and that was back in the days, as Susan also implied, when there was a lot of bipartisanship in the Congress. I do not know someone who represents thoughtful bipartisan speaking service more than Jack Danforth from Missouri. I always had the highest regard for him. A terrific senator, and Susan, just you're very lucky to serve with him. And as you were saying too, actually, Senator Danforth also helped fill you off into a great career. So thank you, Judo, and thank you for Jack Danforth and all he's done. And you've been just a great year, as USTR. I mean, Susan's tough. We talked to her and said, now, don't you give in here, don't you give in there, Susan, and she didn't. Susan's a very able, that's an understatement. She's a premier public servant. Thank you, Susan. And you also said, you're so prescient in thinking of all these things. Montanans will remember you most fondly for bringing the fifth round of the pre-FTA negotiations to Big Sky in Montana 2006. I'll never forget that. Here we had a bunch of Koreans there in Montana, U.S. trade negotiators. They're wondering what the heck they do in Montana. It was cold. And we did have a lot of steak, and I always I want to be able to have a ready answer when someone asks, where's the beef? And it was morning, it was cold. I mean, Susan, as you know, and I'm sure most of you know, we in Montana, that's our standard breakfast, steak and eggs. We have steak in the morning. And I think it made an impression on me. But also, apropos, totally nothing. It's a very strong recollection I have after we, in front of the cameras, lots of cameras there, we each had a little bit of steak. And I remember looking off the side, and there's a reporter from the Bozeman Chronicle who was devouring the rest of everybody's steaks. I'd also like to thank WITA. Thank you very much for presenting me with this lifetime achievement. It really does mean a lot to me. I'm not quite sure what lifetime is. That part of my life out my hair. But thank you so very much. For nearly 30 years, WITA has been the leading forum for discussion of international trade issues. Deeply honored to be here tonight. Thank you so much. The 19th century French writer Alphonse Karr said, the more things change, the more they're the same. This quote is familiar and it's enduring because it's true. The world of international trade has changed significantly, at least since I was elected to the Senate in 1978. But the fundamentals of good trade policy remain the same. During the last 32 years, the centers of economic power have multiplied. In 1978, the United States, Europe, Canada, and Japan accounted for nearly 70% of the world economy. Today, their share is just over 50. In 1978, China, India, Brazil represented only 5% of the world economy. Today, their share has nearly tripled and is rising fast. Our trade with Asia has also grown dramatically. In 1978, China was our 43rd largest trading partner. Today, it's our second. India was our 33rd largest partner. Today, it's the 13th. And in 1978, the value of U.S. trade across the Pacific roughly equaled the value of U.S. trade across the Atlantic. Today, trans-Pacific trade exceeds transatlantic trade by nearly 15%. The trade rules themselves have also expanded. In 1978, the 84 members of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade were in the final stages of the Tokyo Agreement. The GATT system applied then only to goods. It had no enforceable dispute settlement, and it was led by two members, the United States and Europe. Today, the World Trade Organization has 152 members. In addition to goods, its agreements now cover agriculture, services, and intellectual property. The WTO provides mandatory enforceable dispute settlement, and its leading players, including developed economies, as well as major emerging economies like China, India, and Brazil. Modern technology has also revolutionized international trade. The services sector is a good example. In 1978, most services simply could not be exported from the United States. An architect in Billings, Montana could not win a contract to design a hotel in Bangkok, at least not without frequent requirements. But with the internet, email, and advanced telecommunications, last year U.S. firms exported $231 billion in services to customers around the world. The international trading system has thus changed substantially. But the more it has changed, the more the fundamentals of good trade policy remain the same, and perhaps even more important. It's time to return to those fundamentals, and I suggest we focus on four. First, we must increase our exports to create jobs. The U.S. economy has stepped back from the brink of a second Great Depression. We have experienced positive growth in the last 3 quarters. But troubling signs remain. After 5 months of employment gains, the economy lost 125,000 jobs in June. Consumer confidence declined sharply. 15 million people are still looking for work. Although we avoided economic doomsday, we are not out of the woods. Our most urgent economic goal must continue to be jobs, growth. We need to grow. Growth is the key to attacking our federal budget deficits too. It's growth. We have to spend more time and effort in developing policies that enhance growth. Exports create jobs. Last year, America exported more than $1.5 trillion in goods and services. That was last year. And those exports supported nearly 10 million U.S. jobs. We are not meeting our export potential. We are the world's largest economy. We're nearly 3 times the size of our nearest competitor, but we are only the 3rd largest exporter. We trail China and Germany. As a share of national income, America exports less than all of our major trading partners. How do we increase our exports? We must break down barriers and open commercially meaningful markets. Last year, I urged the President to launch the Trans-Pacific Partnership negotiations. I'm pleased that they are now underway. Our exports to just one of the TPP partners, Vietnam, have increased more than 5-fold since 2002. Vietnam is the 2nd fastest growing economy in Asia, so we have only scratched the surface of this potential. And we have only scratched the surface of TPP's potential to increase U.S. exports throughout the Asia-Pacific region. And I hope and expect that the TPP agreement will expand to include additional countries like Malaysia. Since its independence in 1957, Malaysia's economy has grown by an average of nearly 6.5% annually, doubling in size every 11 years.